Okay, perfect. We are live. I'm so excited. Okay. Let's see, I'm gonna make sure everyone's spotlighted. Everyone's spotlighted.
Does it sound clear on my side?
Yes. Wait. May you please say something again one more time?
Sorry?
May you please repeat, like just say something just to make sure again?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Clear? Perfect.
Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, perfect. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start letting people in. I'm wondering if people can see everyone. Add spotlight. Okay, perfect. And then when Aurelia comes on, I'll spotlight her as well. Perfect. All right, I'm gonna start letting everyone in.
Sorry, Jamie, do you need my camera to be open?
Whatever you feel comfortable with, if you want to.
Okay, so for the moment, I will keep it off.
Okay.
when I take turn, I will turn it on.
Okay, perfect. And what I'll do is when you come back on, I'll spotlight you.
Do you need my camera to be open?
Whatever. Okay. Great. So the webinar started. Super excited. Yep. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Oh, everyone's on time too. Okay, people are coming in on time. Okay. I'm going to get started in a few moments. We're just going to wait for more people to come through. Okay. Yes, thank you so much. I was just about to say, and I put it in the chat, thank you so much for being here. If you don't mind sharing your pronouns, your name, where you're from and based, that would be so great. We're so excited that you're here. Oh, hi. Hi, Catherine. Bonjour from France. Hi, Zerlina from Washington, D.C. Thank you for being here. We'll be getting started in a few moments. We'll wait for some more people to come in. Hi, Emirates from London. So nice to, meet you. Thank you for being here. Hi, Alexis from Florida. Hi, Nora from Sweden. So nice to be.
That's my best friend.
Oh, wow. Hi, best friend. My Nora. Hi, Sarah from Switzerland.
Wow.
Hi, Lisa from Belgium. Naima, the Netherlands. Lara, Belgium.
I'm going to close the chat. I feel nervous.
This is great. This is great. So we are at 1:30 and I know more people will be coming in. I just want to honor Lydia's time and our time together and have us get started for such a powerful event. My name is Jamie Swift. I'm the executive director of Black Women Radicals. It's so nice that everyone's here. It's always such an honor to have people here and enjoying our events. The organization, if you're not familiar with Black Women Radicals, we are a Black feminist advocacy organization, and we are dedicated to uplifting Black women and gender expansive peoples Radical Activism in Africa and the African Diaspora. So today we have the honor, or I have the honor to be in conversation with Lydia Gratis. And we're going to engage in a dialogue on what Black deaf justice in Europe looks like. I think that in order for us to be truly radical in our praxis as Black feminists, we should be having discussions on the various intersections of our lives. And I think it's important that we have a conversation with an activist such as Lydia, who is at the vanguard of movement building in Ireland, in Europe, and really honor her work. So thank you so much for being here. I would really like to say first off is that if you would like a live transcript of the conversation, you can click the button at the right, at the bottom of the screen, and it will also provide you with closed captioning. Another action item I would like to discuss is that this is a safe space, right? So I say this all the time, but we do not allow any homophobia, transphobia, queerphobia, ableism, misogynoir, any of those things that cannot be accepted here, and I will kick you out of the chat if that occurs. So thank you so much for being here and respecting the space. So now we're going to get into the conversation, and I'm going to introduce our wonderful guest, Lydia Gratis, and read her very amazing bio. I just keep giving her all these compliments, but and she keeps denying them, but I just want to really honor her work. So Lydia Gratis Mendez was born in South Africa and raised in Ireland. She says she wrote that I always say you can take the girl out of Africa, but you can't take Africa out the girl. She is a writer, social media creative, anti-racism activist, and educator, deaf youth advocate, and a student. She majors in anthropology and international development at Maynooth University and is hoping to do a master's in community and youth work next year. Gratis is on the board of the Irish Deaf Society after serving 2 years as chairperson of the national youth organization catering to deaf youth in Ireland. Gratis established the first ever youth organization in Europe for ethnic minority deaf youth in Europe under the European Union for Deaf Youth. She's in the process of receiving CVs and motivation videos to build her team, with whom she'll be directing an Erasmus study session on race, migration, and xenophobia later this year, amongst other things. She teaches Black history and anti-racism workshops in the Irish deaf community. Gratis has been listed as one of the 8 most influential Black people in Ireland by the Irish Times and one of 100 women changing the landscape of Ireland by the Irish Examiner. Her passion is deeply rooted in helping all people self-optimize and become the best versions of themselves, which is why she started the platform Chronicles of a Blossom to help people discover and understand their truth, as well as to fight for social inclusion and accessibility. When she's not doing that, she'll be found cooking, reading, traveling, or being an introvert with plenty of solitude and self-care. So Lydia, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for giving me the platform to be here. I mean, I feel like Black people don't really get the chance to cross-pollinate and really mingle with each other the way we should across continents. Black deaf people especially don't get platforms like this to be part of the conversation, be part of movement building and transformation on a much, much grander scale. So just to be here with you, you applaud me so much, but you inspire me so much. So to be told that I'm inspired by something like you, that means so much to me. So thank you so much for giving me a chance to just come on here and chit chat with you.
Yes, it's an honor to be in conversation. I also want to let our audience know that this conversation is a part of Black Women Radicals Afrofeminisms in Europe series, which is a political meditation, interrogation, and celebration of Afrofeminisms and Black feminisms in Europe. So Lydia, we're going to get started in our conversation and our chit chat. And the first theme of this discussion, I would really want to delve in, what is it like to be a Black woman in Ireland? And my first question is, do you mind sharing your personal experience of being a Black woman in Ireland and how you navigate certain oppressions in the country?
That's such a loaded question. My personal experience of growing up in Ireland as a Black woman has been quite interesting. I feel like I'm constantly in a struggle of trying to fit in, whether that's as a Black woman in a white-centered country or a Black woman in a Black Irish community that doesn't prioritize accessibility and inclusion. When I first moved here from South Africa at the age of 7, there weren't really that many Black people. So for a long time, I thought that my experience of being the only one was like unique to me. Ironically, the more we all share our experiences, we realize that we all have the same stories of being the only Black girl in the school to being the only Black woman at work. We all share the same experiences of our white teachers saying the N-word during reading To Kill a Mockingbird, and then the whole class turns and looks at you as if they're asking for permission or they're waiting to see your reaction. We have the same stories of sitting in red meetings and being asked by our colleagues if they can touch our hair, or how do they differentiate, how do we differentiate how different people in Africa look, or even instances where like you're asked if they can touch your hair in the middle of a work meeting and you're left to kind of like figure out, how am I going to navigate being professional and not showing a reaction so I don't fit into the stereotype, you know? But yeah, I was the first Black deaf person in the Irish deaf community. And for many, many years, I was the only one. I didn't find my Black hearing friends in Ireland until I was about 15. And at that point, I'd kind of been floating in the white deaf community for about 9 years, which pretty much explains why I don't have a strong Irish accent. People are always like, "Well, you don't sound like you come from Ireland." I'm like, yeah, all the white people that I was around growing up were all deaf, so everybody was signing. And then all the Black people I was around were all from Africa, so I got to keep my home accent a little bit. And I think that's like something unique about my experience that I didn't even realize until last year. I was just like, I don't pick up accents that quickly. But then when you kind of look back at your history and your story, you're like, oh, okay. Also, I get comments from people saying things like, oh my gosh, if you didn't tell me that you were deaf, I would never know. You speak so well. I'm like, that's not a compliment. That's from years of trauma and speech therapy, trying to navigate the Black community in a way that I could hide my deafness and hide myself from people thinking there was a problem with me, because I didn't know better as a kid. I thought that if nobody saw my hearing aids and I could speak so well, then I could navigate the Black community in a way that I wouldn't have to put up with people's pity or sympathy or be talked to as if I didn't have intelligence as soon as they knew. And then I could go back into the deaf community, which was all white for me, and dim my Blackness. So I wouldn't have to be a stereotype. I wouldn't have to be the spokesperson for Black people. I wouldn't have to answer any questions. And it's just so strange because I remember having a conversation, an interview a while back. The interviewer was like, your experience growing up on Ireland is so unique. And I was like, wait, that's so true. It's unique. So I've always just thought of myself as different. And I think when you switch the language that you use, it changes everything. Like, we don't realize how much of us is a survival mechanism. For instance, like my hair is up right now and everyone can see my hearing aids. But growing up, my hair was always down because I was like, if they don't see my hearing aids and I speak really well, nobody's gonna know. Why? Like, I am who I am. There's so much more that I bring to the table being who I am. There's so much more that I can do being who I am. There's so much about my identity that I'm so proud of, especially within the European space. Yeah, I mean, there's something more I could add, but I think the microaggressions speak for themselves, especially as a minority within a minority, growing up in a country that centers whiteness. There's totally going to be struggles. Even if we want to be like, oh, let's focus on the positive, let's focus on how great of a country it is, there's going to be something that just shakes you a little bit.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing and for contextualizing your experience, because it seems like, yes, you're dealing with like white supremacy and racism in a predominantly white society and country, obviously. But then also, too, you're dealing with ableism and discrimination, maybe from from members of the Black community as well. And so this very intersectional experience of trying to navigate this and also be an advocate and activist for the Black deaf community in Ireland. And yes, and so my next kind of question goes into Black disability or Black deaf justice in Ireland and Europe. And so what does Black deaf justice and organizing look like in the Irish and also in the European context? And can you speak a little bit more about how disabled Black communities or deaf Black communities particularly are excluded and ostracized within the larger Irish/European context, particularly when it comes to deaf communities?
Okay. There's a huge, vibrant Black community in Ireland, and everyone comes from all parts of the world. And it's so beautiful to see the cultural merge in recent years. I'm so proud of like how far we've come and how fast we've stood in action and united when it comes to calling for equality and justice. But in regards to the Irish government, I mean, and society in general in Europe and in Ireland, I think we face similar struggles to Black people all over the world. You know, trying to be seen as human beings by people who aren't able to empathize or conversate with the intention to listen and understand rather than to react and respond. You know, we have families, activists, and organizations working together to put a stop to systems. And one of the major systems at the moment, in a broader context, not just in regards to the deaf community, is direct provision. Direct provision is an emergency measure to like accommodate asylum seekers coming into Ireland by providing them with food and shelter. It was established as a temporary thing back in 1999, 2000, but it still remains in place to this day. When it was first set up, people weren't meant to stay in the accommodation for more than 6 months. And despite that, some people have been there for over 15 years. There's 38 centers across the country, and only 7 are state-owned. 3 were purpose-built, and the other 28 are centers that are converted from places like mobile homes, hostels, convents, and they're run for-profit by corporations. And some of these corporations use offshore accounts and laws to operate in other countries, meaning that they don't have to disclose the profits that they make. But still, the estimates have been said to come up to 100 million. Despite making so much money, there's a widespread problem with poor conditions in these centers. In 2017, a Diaspora center was found to be selling expired food, including 2-month-old chicken. Most centers don't sell food. Instead, they provide food in a cafeteria, which the Irish Immigration Support Center says is often inedible or poor quality, bland, culturally inappropriate. And due to the fact that residents only receive $38.80 a week, they can't afford to buy their own food outside of the centers. And then we got the EU report, which looked into direct provision conditions recently, and it found that they were like prisons, you know, due to the fact that people were living there and having to share a room. It could be a family of 5 in 1 bedroom, staying in the system for many years, oftentimes not even being allowed visitors and being restricted from staying out late. And then in 2018, asylum seekers were banned from working or making Ireland, which makes Ireland only one of 2 EU countries that did so. This was overturned after being found to be unconstitutional. And asylum seekers are now starting to work 9 months after applying for asylum, but that's only if the decision hasn't been made on the application for international protection. And the reason Ireland did this is because they didn't want to have a pull factor. They didn't want to make it more of a safe space so more asylum seekers would come. And that's just so crazy to me. It's cold, especially when you look at the history of Ireland and how Irish people emigrated back in the day. So at the moment, anyway, there's over 7,000 people living in direct provision centers, which is almost twice the amount of the Irish prison system. 30% of those people are children, which some of those children have lived there their entire lives. And psychologists have said that this is a concern for their well-being. These systems have been found to be 5 times more likely to have like psychiatric these children are 5 times more likely to have mental illnesses. They're 15 times more likely to be diagnosed with anxiety, depression, or PTSD. There's even been reports of people going in with good mental health initially and then coming out hallucinating after spending so many years in the system. And so many people have even died from this. That's just one fight that we're going through. And then you hear people say things like, oh, police brutality is only an American problem. There's no racism in Europe. There's no racism in Ireland. In December, we lost a really good friend. We lost George Nkentra, who was a Nigerian Irish man living in Ireland, grew up in Ireland, but had mental health issues. He was killed outside his home by the police. Over the next few days and weeks, we saw hate speech. We saw people telling Africans and Black people and African Americans and anybody that had melanin to go back where they came from. We're all thugs and gangs. The newspapers were saying this too. And then weeks pass and the facts start coming out. He doesn't have 32 criminal convictions. He's never been a criminal. He's not a thug. He had mental health problems. But the police still shot 6 bullets into him after his little sister, came out of the house and said he has mental health problems. They told her to go back in, and then they killed her brother. And we fight and we weep and we cry and we march and we say Black Lives Matter, and people look at us and they're like, you're in Europe, that has nothing to do with you. White Americans are European. It has everything to do with us. Black Americans are not fighting alone. They're not fighting a fight that is just affecting them there. The systems that are in America are the very systems that were established in Europe, are the very systems that are still chaining Africa to this day. You know, we want it to be a separate entity so bad, but it's not. It's not. We're all crying to dismantle the very same systems. We're all crying to achieve the very same justice, and we're all asking the same why. You know, you even think of a much smaller scale. There's an influencer who's also a doctor here in Ireland, Adana Steinacker. She talks so much about her experience of going to medical school as a Nigerian woman, marrying a German man, moving to Ireland. Part of the reason why she, after 9 years of going to medical school, decides that I'm not going to be a doctor anymore. I think I'm going to do other stuff. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to set up businesses in Africa. I'm going to take this social media advocacy to a next level, because every time you go into work, you have elderly white patients saying, no, not you. I want a real doctor because of the color of your skin. She even talks about her experience as a pregnant woman when her husband had to fly to South Africa for work. And she was like, we need to buy a house before our first child is born. You go do your thing for work and I'll start looking at houses. She was refused all those houses. She knew why. We know why. When her white husband came back, she told him, I have to pick my battles. We need a house before we have our child. So you go look at the very same house as I was at. A week later, they had a home that she loved. They said yes to him and no to her. But we're still being told it's an American problem. They're all interwebbed. The issues are interwebbed. And I think the more and the sooner and the faster we all join hands and we all fight together for each other, the better. Because it's real. It's real.
Definitely. And I thank you for sharing those examples, because even a lot of times how the European propaganda machine is that there's only white people in Europe, right? That there are no Black people in Ireland, that there are no Black people in Italy, that there are no Black people in the United Kingdom. And that is why the series is here, to the Afrofeminisms in Europe series, is to provide a fuller context, right? And there's also other Black women and people in Europe who've always done this work. So this is not anything new. Black people in Europe have always been here and they will continue to be here. But I thank you for providing those examples, because it does give a fuller context to show how like you said, interwebbed our fight is for liberation, and how we really need to have a critical analysis, not only on like global white supremacy and cis heteronormativity and capitalism, patriarchy, but even within our communities in the African diaspora, how are we dealing with certain issues that are similar, and how are we dealing with certain issues that are quite different in the context we're living in, and also these intersectional identities and inequities that we have to contend with and face and live. And so I appreciate you for contextualizing and offering that analysis. And I definitely would like us to talk about, you spoke about like you spoke about white supremacy and racial inequities and injustices that impact the Black community in total. But what does disability justice and organizing look like in the Irish and European context? And can you speak to a little bit of like how disabled Black communities are further ostracized and impacted in Ireland and also within the European context?
Yeah, I think I'll start speaking from my experience. I think a lot of white people in positions of authority, especially, see you as more of a human being when you're deaf and or disabled. I've had conversations with numerous Black disabled women deaf and disabled women, who've told me how terribly they've been treated in medical systems, educational systems, any kind of system where a service is provided, until the person working with them finds out that they have a disability. And it's almost like a switch turns. They stop, and you go from being a threat, you go from being an anomaly to being, oh, I'm so sad, let me help you. Because now you're somehow seen as below them even more. It's clear to them how they can help you. They don't know how to help you as a Black person, but they can think of ways to help you as a deaf person, a disabled person, you know? In terms of like further being excluded, many Black Europeans are very much connected to Africa and African culture, which is amazing for us. But sometimes this means that Afro-European communities are also still tied into old ways of thinking and processing deafness and disability. Like if parents give birth to a child with a disability, it's perceived as a generational curse. Hide the child, fix them. People are not unpacking the autism and the ableism or seeing it for what it is. I was asked in a meeting recently, how far do you think the conversation on accessibility is in the Black community? And I wanted to laugh. I was like, what conversation? Because I was literally thinking that people will literally tell you, that have to pay for you way faster than they'll be like, oh, let me provide a sign language interpreter. I have so many stories of Black European deaf friends who've been like, oh, I went to the airport and I didn't want to miss an announcement about my flight. So I went to the help desk and I told them I was deaf and they brought me a wheelchair. And I'm like, how do your ears and your legs, like it doesn't, or like Black people aren't being included, understood, spoken to, or catered to nearly enough. Because the embedded belief is to save or fix a person. People are somehow shocked when they find out that someone has a disability and they're successful. They're not successful because they have a disability. They're successful despite their disability. That shocks people because now you're no longer inspiration phone because you did it all by yourself. You don't need to wow the world. You don't need to be saved. The same thing goes for the Black Lives Matter protests that we have here. I've been contacted on numerous occasions and been asked to provide sign language interpreters, which for me makes me so happy because now it's like I'm at the forefront of activism, but now I can make sure that the people that are my support system have that access too. They can also be there for the fight. But when you get there and they're happy because they can announce to the whole crowd that sign language interpreters are provided. But when you ask, where's the platform for the interpreter to stand and everybody to watch, you're looked as if you're asking too much. So now you have the interpreter standing in a position, especially during a pandemic, where people are just passing, it's not accessible, they're not on a platform. You can't do the bare minimum and say, I'm done, I provided what you need. You have to understand the nitty gritty of what activism and what accessibility and inclusion really entitles, and what is really required of you, for lack of a better word, but as an ally, what you really need to understand if you're making sure that you're including everybody in our fight for justice. You're ensuring that everybody is heard, everybody is understood, and everybody is welcome, everybody is present. Because oftentimes, for me, I find working in deaf spaces so much easier than working in hearing spaces, because deaf people will, Black deaf people specifically, will figure out how to accommodate hearing people faster than hearing people will accommodate deaf people. And I often tell people that the interpreter is not here because I can't communicate with you. The interpreter is here because you cannot communicate with me. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, I've been fighting my whole life to figure out how to communicate with you. But I'm just something you heard of. We've got so much more to do, but I'm so grateful for what we have been doing.
Yes, thank you for sharing your experiences. And I think that if we are people who say that we're dedicated to radical movement building, particularly Black people, Black feminists, Black organizers, we really do need to introspect our ableism and our certain prejudices, and recognize that we have ostracized certain communities within our communities. And how do we become better in our allyship? How do we become really true in our solidarity? And we just can't really speak it. We have to literally do it. And that requires political education. That requires listening to Black deaf communities. That requires us to be humble and say, like, we don't know, right? But also not having people teach us, but also to take action and be well-read and studious and listen. And I thank you for sharing that, because it pushes us further, right? And we're not gonna leave Black, deaf, and disabled people behind. We cannot do that. We will never achieve liberation if we do that. We're not gonna leave folks in our communities who are further marginalized behind. It doesn't make sense. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I meant to say this earlier, I just want to shout out to Natasha and Aurelia for being here and interpreting. And it's also really refreshing to see Black women interpreters. And so I just want to say thank you. Thank you, Lydia, for the introduction to these amazing women. Thank you for your interpretation. And yes, just thank you for being here.
Let me just add, now that you've mentioned them, I wanna applaud them. I'm so happy that I found them. It took me 6 weeks to find Natasha and Aurelia, which I feel is a further example of how deafness and disability is viewed in Black communities. We have sign language interpreters in many countries, right? But when it comes to finding international sign language interpreters that can communicate with the whole world in international sign language, especially when I'm looking for Black women, it was like finding a needle in a haystack. I found Aurelia on Twitter and I was just like, I need one more. And then she introduced me to Natasha and we clicked immediately. And this was my first time ever working with Black interpreters, ever in my life, which does even more. We don't have any here in our youth at all, you know? So to meet them and connect so well with them and to have them not validate, but share our experiences as well, I'm so grateful for that. I'm so thankful for them freeing their time and being here and just being part of a conversation.
Yes, and you and I had some time trying to go back and forth,
Yeah.
and to make sure that this event is inclusive and you felt represented, and that this conversation is a safe space for you and our audience members. And we could talk more about it, but just certain things that have been said, and it's really refreshing for everyone to be here, because we do need more Black women interpreters, particularly in the international sign language interpretation. And so I'll just leave it at that. We won't get into the nitty gritty because you already know how I feel. So my next question is that, so you established the first ever youth organization in Europe for ethnic minority deaf youth, under the European Union for Deaf Youth. So what propelled you to found this organization, and what services, events, initiatives do you offer to ethnic minority deaf youth?
I'm so excited for this. It's such an honor to be able to do this. I'm really, really grateful to the staff and the board behind EUDY. There was a lot of organizations that came to me around the time of protests and George Floyd's death last year. And every single approach was so triggering. It was so triggering. But EUDY, they're the only organization I've worked with that have come correct every step of our working together. They have educated themselves. They've advocated for projects that I believe would make a difference. They've wholeheartedly pushed for the change that's necessary. And it's amazing. We've officially selected the team that'll be joining me, and we have Amrit Nanda from India. She grew up in the UK. We have Ramal Butcher, who's originally Haitian. He grew up in Sweden. We have Katya Pahud, originally Kenyan. She grew up in Switzerland. And last but not least, we have Nadeem Islam. He's from Bangladesh, and he grew up in the UK too. Like, you can probably see the smile on my face. I can't emphasize enough how happy I am to be the person I needed when I was a kid. I'm not going to get emotional. The fact that I'm able to work with these amazing people, they've all come from different backgrounds. They all work in different career fields, and they all bring something extra spectacular to the table. We're really about to change things for the next generation of deaf ethnic minority youth through policy building, raising awareness, empowering young ethnic minority deaf children all around Europe. Like, I'm really hoping that this is something that has an impact on the Black community in general, where conversations are started, especially outside the deaf community. I think when deaf and disabled people collectively take the reins, we show exactly who we are and what we can do despite the limitations that society places on us. We have our first official meeting next coming week, and it's only upwards from there. I cannot wait to share everything that we've planned with the EUDY, with the Council of Europe, European Parliament, European Youth Forum, and the thing that propelled me to start having these conversations was when I'd have teenagers in IDY Youth Club, the youth organization that I used to be the chairperson of, come to me and speak their truth, talk about their experiences. And I saw so much of myself in their experiences. But the big hit was realizing that those kids were not coming before. It was the representation, right? It's not me, but having that role model of there's somebody that looks like me. The same thing with social media. I have younger kids coming to me and they're like, I can't wait to meet you. You inspire me so much. I want to be bigger. I want to be better. Can you give me advice on this? But you also have them coming and saying, I feel like I'm the only one in my country. I feel like I'm the only one in the deaf community. I feel like white deaf people don't understand me. I'm like, I remember feeling like that too. But you're not alone. That's the beauty of being in 2021. we're all over the world, but we're so connected through the internet, and we can make a plan to elevate. We can make a plan to ensure that the next generation has the resources that it needs and the knowledge that it needs to empower themselves, to validate themselves, you know? Yeah. Even at a board capacity, all the chairpersons of the organization that I was with before were all white people. And then after I left, the last two boards have had Black and Asian people. It's about creating a domino effect of representation, you know? Being a minority within a minority is such a complex and complicated experience. And I know that way too many deaf youth in Europe can relate to that on a conscious or subconscious level. But try to make an effort to not hide your deafness, even if you think it's a survival mechanism. Try to make an effort not to hide or dim your Blackness, you know? We're all going through similar struggles in a white space, a white world, of feeling like you need to be less than you are. You're constantly hiding. When do you get to shine? My hope for the focus group is that it will be a safe space, a fountain of grace for deaf ethnic minority youth all over the world, but especially in Europe, where they no longer feel alone and they feel represented, and maybe we can build that collective culture out here that's a bit different, you know, and share it with each other. And just, I'm excited. I'm so grateful. I'm excited what's to come. And I'm so grateful for the team that I've been working with. It's so amazing in my own way.
This is so beautiful, and I'm so happy to see you get, you know, emotional and about this. I'm really happy for you, because what you and the board are doing are really radicalizing and pushing back against ostracization, erasure, neglect, and saying, like I say, I always say all the time, like, we are here and always have been. And I'm excited to see what is going to be produced from this amazing council, and pushing back against the racism within the white deaf community, and also ableism in the Black community as well, right? And making a name and stake for yourselves. And so I'm super, super excited about this. Are there any other organizations or initiatives that speak to concerns or the activism of the Black deaf community in Ireland and Europe? Or I'm assuming you're the first, like your organization's the first organization of its kind, or are there other organizations that do this work as well?
Yeah, Europe is such a huge continent with so many different languages. And in my mind, there's not enough, but I also need to take into account that other countries could have movements and initiatives that I am not aware of because of the language barrier. Majority of the ones I know are based in the UK, which I feel ties into England's history of colonialism. There's so many more Black people in the UK than there are in a lot of other European countries. And England has a huge Black and disabled community, Black deaf and disabled community, who collectively work together. And I feel like they do a great job of reaching out, but disabled people are practically non-existent in the mainstream. So imagine how underrepresented Black people are. Black women, femmes, and non-binary people with disabilities. The lack of representation and unaddressed discrimination that's faced on a daily basis. Black disabled people are less visible, less heard, less seen, represented in society, and the issues become even more apparent when you begin to look at the resources available for Black disabled people in Europe. There's a significant lack of charities, nonprofits, platforms, networks, organizations, or support groups for those for people who have those experiences, those intersecting experiences. The anti-Blackness and ableism is real. However, despite being a short supply, there's some individuals and organizations out there that work tirelessly to improve the lives of Black people with disabilities and to provide support and advice, such as DUA, Deaf Ethnic Women's Association. It's a national organization that's run by and for deaf ethnic minority women. DUA provides a range of support and empowers deaf ethnic minority women in the UK to have a choice, control, be active, and be successful in all aspects of their life. And then we have the Equality National Council, which is also in the UK. It's Britain's only Black and ethnic minority user-led disabled people's organization, and it aims to support Black people and ethnic minority people who suffer with long-term disabilities. The organization's main focus is to offer a mentoring program for people living with disabilities, as well as assisting the community in accessing benefits and services, locating like the proper care and support, finding work, and so much more. We have BD UK, Black Deaf UK, which is an initiative created by an amazing guy in the UK, politics student, Jester, who is 21 years old. He created this as a safe space for Black deaf people in the UK to network, empower, and collectively advocate for accessibility and opportunity. There's many more of them, but most that I do know are UK based. Aside from the focus group with EUDY, yeah, I know for sure, I mean, the Black community is a strong, resilient, thriving community. Wherever you find us, we have our truth, we have our story, we're fighting. So there has to be so many more. It's just that language barrier of finding each other and, locking arms. That's been a struggle.
Thank you for sharing and providing other resources. I think this is important as well, right? Particularly for, I'm based in the Washington, D.C. area, and I think that for Black communities in the US who want to have a more transnational understanding of Black feminist activism, the intersections of Black feminist activism in a different context, in a European context, I think these resources are very important, and to also follow and learn and engage with these conversations or with these organizations. So thank you for providing that. I'm thankful for the work, and I'm excited to see the more work coming from EUDY, because I think, yes, what you're doing, like I said, is very revolutionary, radical, pushing the agenda, pushing the envelope, and like you said before, and I know you're getting emotional at one point, but you don't want anyone, other Black deaf youth, not to go through what you went through. And I think that this is what is needed. So thank you so much for that. So we're getting up into our last part of the conversation. And also I just want to let people know that we will also have a Q&A portion of the conversation where you will get to ask Lydia questions. And also too, you have a lot of people, someone emailed me prior to the event and gave a list of questions. So I was like, okay. No, I'm serious. They gave me like 4 or 5 questions and I was like, oh, wow, they're ready. They're ready for you. They're excited.
Wow.
So we really want to honor that. And we'll have a 30-minute Q&A portion of the conversation. But for the last part of our chit chat conversation together, yes, Caroline, Lydia is very popular. She has a lot of questions. So Caroline in the chat said, wow. So for the last part of our conversation, I would really want to talk to you about the future, or your opinions on the future of Black deaf justice and organizing in Europe. And so simply, what are your hopes for the future of Black deaf organizing and justice in Ireland and Europe, and even in the diaspora? Yeah.
I would love to see more visibility, more platforms, more breaking of glass ceilings. I'd also like to see more able-bodied and inherent ethnic minority people as allies who are pushing for change with the intention to uplift and collaboratively work together. I also hope more Black deaf people and disabled people take their rightful place in every and platform they desire. They push and they persevere and feel they belong loudly, unapologetically, confidently, advocating for themselves and for each other. Issa Rae once said something that like really resonated with me. She said we shouldn't be aiming to network up, we should be aiming to network across. Who's next to you? Who's struggling? Who's struggling with you? Who's in the trenches with you? Who's just as hungry for change and justice as you? Those are the people that you need to be pioneering change with. They're the people that you should be networking with. Oftentimes we're trying to be like, oh, that person's doing better than me. Let me try and get in the circle. No, your friend this side has skills that you don't have, and your friend the other side has skills that you don't have, and you're both going the same direction. Work together. Elevate the people in your life. Celebrate the people in your life. One thing that I've noticed is when you step into your truth unapologetically, it encourages others to do the same. So we just need to be reminded that someone like you needs you. And yeah, I would just love to see less shame and less worrying about what other people think. It was the most liberating thing when I stopped doing that. I wouldn't be here talking to you if I was still doing that. It's be you, do you, boo. Do you, boo. Honestly.
Yes, I love that. Do you, boo. Yes. And just based on our previous conversation before and everything that you triumphed over and battled with, it's beautiful that you can say just be yourself, right? And you're at the point where like just do you, boo, and giving that word of encouragement, and also working together with other people, being in community, movement building, and not this competition and the siloing of working here and there, but really working together to see to build that mass movement, that mass mobilization, so that we can achieve liberation. And so thank you so much, Lydia. Thank you so much. This conversation has been, I've learned so much from you, our previous conversation. And also like when I was found an article about you, I was like, I need to know who this person is. Like I need to find out who Lydia is. I need to speak with her. And I just want to say thank you for partnering and working with Black Women Radicals. And I know our audience has several questions, and I am not trying to get anyone upset. And I just want to say, we won't be able to answer all the questions, but please know that we will have a dialogue, a Q&A. So if you want to ask Lydia questions, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. My right, maybe your left of the screen, to ask Lydia any questions. So thank you so much again, Lydia. So let's get into the Q&A part of the conversation, because like I said, someone emailed me with a lot of questions. So let's see. Okay. So I'm sorry, I was trying to read which question was the best. So I hope I'm saying their name correctly, but Taraka Florence asks, are there any governmental laws assuring your protection as a Black deaf woman in Ireland or for Black deaf people in general?
No. A lot of laws and policies are built with the people, Black people in mind. I mean, systems that were not created for you cannot protect you. So I think now, I hate the fact that it took another death of a Black person for us to be here, but now that people are waking up and becoming more conscious, conversations are being had to put those in place. And I think it's the same thing on a European scale, you know? Everybody wants to talk about diversity and inclusion like it's a newfound word, but no, not at the moment. not that I'm conscious of.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing. So the other question, I'll ask two questions from Taraka. Like I said, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Forgive me if I'm not. So their other question was, what experiences do Black deaf women in Europe/Ireland, to be specific, face daily that may be different from Black deaf women in the US? Could it be street harassment or harassment, misogynoir, etc.? What do you think there are the differences between Black deaf women in Europe and Ireland? Yeah.
The Black deaf community in the US is much bigger. There are much more hearing or able-bodied Black people advocating with deaf and disabled people, especially deaf and disabled women. There is more unity and advocacy. There is more unity and representation. We don't really have that yet. I need to add the yet in there. So on a daily basis, you're constantly finding, you're constantly fighting misogynoir as well as autism. There was an instance where I went to a uni lecture and they refused to provide interpreters, and my hearing aids broke that day. This was the first time that I felt deaf in a hearing space. This was the first time that I ever was like, yeah, you need to own your truth. Because I went into the bathroom and I cried. I cried and I called my mom and I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. I'm dropping out. I can't do it. I know I said I wanted to go to college, but they're not giving me what I need. And it's finally dawned on me that I do need support. All those years of hiding, thinking there was nothing wrong with me. There is nothing wrong with me, but I spent so long hiding and lying to myself, and the truth kept punching me in the face, right? While in the States, problems like that are solved like this. You have an issue with your hearing aids, there's so many places to go. You have an issue when it comes to counseling that you want to talk about, the things you're dealing with. We have less than 10 Black therapists in the country, and those are only found a year ago. If you search Twitter and you find Irish Black people looking for therapists, everybody says the same thing. Where's the Black therapist? How do we find Black therapists? Can somebody let me know if you ever find a Black therapist? We don't have that. So we're so much more in terms of mental health support, disability support, just support in general. We're not where we need to be. Again, the UK is much more further than a lot of European countries, but they're not where they need to be either. You know, we're all still trying to advocate for ourselves and hoping somebody notices enough to think that what we're saying is important, which is really ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's a daily struggle of, you go here, they can't relate to you when you don't look like them, so they're not going to help you. You go here, you look at them, but they feel sorry for you, so they don't know how to help you.
Thank you for providing context for that. And there's I'm sorry, all these other questions keep popping up because you're popular. Let me see. Thank you so much for answering that question. Let's see. So who's next? So Sophia. Sophia wrote 4 questions, so like excited too. Sophia asked, I'll ask the first one, who is your role model? Who is Lydia's role model? And also I'll ask the 2-part question, who is Lydia's role model and what was the process of finding interpreters like? Like, I know you spoke about it before, but.
My role model, my mom. My mom is amazing. We don't talk about this often, but the process of moving to Ireland was a really complicated one. We never intended to move here to stay. My mom my parents had a really toxic relationship growing up, and I witnessed my dad abuse my mom on numerous occasions to a point where she just left. And I remember being 5 and being like, I know why she left. Like, people expected me to be like, boo-hoo, my mom is gone. I was like, she's gonna come back to me, but I'm just glad she left because I'm tired of seeing this, you know, the trauma that is left on her, the trauma it left on me. I stayed with my aunt for a while, and a year later, I got in a flight by myself at the age of 7 and came to Ireland to meet my mom. And ever since then, I've seen her push, I've seen her advocate, I've seen her bring my entire family to Ireland, pay for their education, put them on track to becoming bigger and better. I've seen her cater to herself and cater to 5 kids on her own. I have seen her do, wow. My mom is, when you talk about Black girl magic, when you talk about Black women being amazing, I look at my mother and I'm like, how have you survived all of this with a bunch of degrees, bunch of masters, a PhD, speaking 8 languages, like, and still being here to say, I'm going to make sure my kids get the best of the best. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to take care of all my kids. And even after losing my older brother in a car accident about 11 years ago, she still pushed herself enough to be like, I'm going to move to the UK just so my kids can see me survive and thrive in an environment that doesn't remind me too much of my own trauma. It takes so much strength and so much resilience to take your pain, put it in a pretty little box, and say, how can I serve you even more? I cannot applaud her enough. My role model is my mother. I love her so much. Like, there's so much I could say about her and her experiences, but I'm sure she's writing that book, so it's okay.
Wow, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Ooh, it makes me want to cry. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And your second question, the interpreters, I touched on that a little bit. I'm amazed. I mean, I knew it was going to be hard to find Black female international sign language interpreters. We don't have Black any male, female, non-binary. We don't have Black interpreters in Ireland. I'm in my 20s, and this is my first time working with Black interpreters. And the search was so frustrating because not only am I hoping to find somebody that can represent me and understand my experiences and articulate them effectively, but I'm also hoping to find somebody that is skilled enough to create that accessibility, you know? I was so nervous about speaking in our interview because within the deaf community, oftentimes you experience this thing of, I'm not going to talk, I'm going to turn off my voice. And I understand that having a voice comes with privilege, but it also comes with anxiety, because I didn't choose to be a deaf person who can speak. I didn't choose to be here. But I do understand that people need to understand that deafness is a spectrum, you know? We're not all going to be the same level of deaf. We're not all going to be the same level of hard of hearing. We're not all going to express ourselves the same way. So when I met Aurelia and I met Natasha and I was like, I want to sign, there was a few hiccups and complications that didn't make that possible, but they were so amazing in knowing how to make sure that we could work together in a way that you worry about what you need to say and we'll worry about how we deliver your message. Don't worry about that, right? But people are going to see this interview and they're going to be like, oh, why did she choose to talk? She just wants to show that she can talk. That's not it. That is really not it. There's so much anxiety that comes with it. Like, you would see me express myself differently based on the accessibility that's there. I'm doing what I can with what I have. And what I have is these 2 amazing women who are like a needle in a haystack to find. And I'm grateful.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. Yes, it was definitely a process. And I'm grateful that Natasha.
I think we went back and forth for months, not even weeks, months.
Yes. I will leave it, like I said, at that, because you already know how I feel, girl, about some things. But it's yes, thank you so much for that. So we have a few more questions. Let's see. So I really want to get to Zerlina's question. So Zerlina's question is, hi, as a hearing person who is involved in deaf activism, I often worry about taking up space. Beyond learning American Sign Language and donating to community groups, and without unloading the labor on you, are there better ways for the hearing community to uplift and honor the deaf communities? How do you see the hearing community being involved? As I've seen several deaf/HH individuals say that hearing folks are not as welcome. Forgive the length of my questions. Again, I thank you for this conversation, brilliant and necessary.
Without sounding cheeky, if you're going to tell somebody that you're unloading labor on them, then you're unloading, that you're not trying to, you're still doing it at the end of the day, because my answer goes to the most basic thing that I can possibly say. Get into the community, become friends with deaf and hard of hearing people. Nobody needs your donations and your help. They need your friendship. They need your understanding. Like, we need hearing people to come to the deaf community because they're passionate about sign language, they're passionate about the deaf community. Like, a lot of people don't know that the deaf community views itself as a linguistic minority group, not a disability group. And so when you come into a culture and when you come into a community, you have to respect the people in that community without thinking that you're coming in to help people. You're coming in to donate to people. That mindset already says where you are and where you're coming from, you know? Become friends with deaf people. Nobody wants to feel like they're only invited to your dinner table because you need a token at the table. Get into the community, mingle, shop deaf businesses, just deaf businesses specifically. I mean, you know, yeah, don't come into any community, especially a minority, marginalized community, with the intent to donate and help. No. Become friends, get into the community, get to know the community, form alliances, work with people, uplift deaf voices, pass on platforms. Don't take up space. Be there without taking up space. It's very simple. It's very, very simple. It's the same mindset that I have when you have white people saying, oh, I'm going to Africa to build houses. You don't have to build our own houses. Just say that you feel crap about yourself and so you need to go to the motherland for a while. It's simple. There's nothing more I can say. It's really very simple.
Thank you for sharing that, your response for that. And yes, there's some other questions, but you've already answered them, some of them during your conversation. So if there's anyone else that has any other questions for Lydia, please feel free to use the Q&A box. But I guess I can also ask this other question that someone asked, but I know you talked about it before, but they asked the whole continents have been in touch due to the rapid and latest technology. What type of collaborations and consultations, if possible, would you like to see happening between Black deaf people all over the world?
Oh, they're already happening. Especially during COVID right now, the Zoom conversations were cross-pollinating, sharing our experiences in Europe, Africa, America, all the other places, as Black deaf people, and also sharing the initiatives and organizations that are focused on uplifting Black deaf people, strategically planning to elevate ourselves in a way. We'll be like, oh, okay, so this works in Europe, let's try in Africa, or this works in Africa, let's try in Asia. You know, I'm seeing everything that I hope I am seeing happen right now, and it's by deaf people, for deaf people, by Black deaf people, for Black deaf people, everywhere. Yeah, it's inspiring, and it's people that are from so many different career fields coming together to be like, I see you, keep doing what you're doing, and I love it. I love it.
Great. Thank you so much for offering that too. I think that's important as well. Everyone, even though it's been such a tragedy with the COVID-19 pandemic, the global pandemic, it also has brought people together in ways, like you said, that we probably wouldn't have done before, could be able to do beforehand. Even with this conversation, right? I'm really grateful for this conversation because it really shows the importance of even Black feminist movement building over the World Wide Web, right? And using Zoom to have these critical conversations. So thank you so much for that. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you for putting that there, Lydia. Actually, yes, there's another question. I see it here. So Jepta, I believe, forgive me if I'm saying your name wrong, but the question was, or is, within the deaf community, do you feel that Black deaf men express their views about racism and white supremacy? And do you feel like they're actively excluding Black deaf women, as a lot of them always have one lens?
Absolutely. I saw a TikTok the other day that was like, yeah, that's true. It was basically saying that Black men and white women are very similar in the fact that they choose, Black deaf men in this instance, choose their role as men before they choose their role as a Black person or a deaf person. Or fight for the role, fight for the identity, let me just say that, as a black person or a deaf person. Masculinity is the flag they will wave the proudest, right? So oftentimes you see, I can count on one hand the Black deaf men that I know around the world, not just in Europe, who I'm like, I salute you, brother. Like, keep doing what you're doing. Which is so bad because I can count so many Black deaf women, right? Black men are too comfortable at being accepted and being pushed just for being men. That your struggle is still there, you're still fighting, things are not getting better. So sitting there comfortably in your little chair being like, oh, it's fine, at least I'm okay on this side. It's not gonna work. And I see a lot of Black deaf men telling Black deaf women that we are too emotional when it comes to activism. We need to take jokes when it comes to racism. We need to relax when it comes to misogyny. Do better, do more. The system was not built for you, so don't be fooled to think that's gonna work for you. Absolutely do more. They're not doing enough in Europe and in the world in general.
Thank you for that question and also providing that context and your response, because there's just, yes, in certain communities, like I said, we may experience similar concerns, and in this case, yes, but also thank you for that question because it also provides another context scenario experience in terms of the dynamics sometimes between Black deaf women and Black deaf men. So thank you so much for that. And there's another question, Seraphine, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Please forgive me if I'm not. They asked, what do you want to achieve for the future?
I'm not saying this to be humble, but I think a lot of us are at this place with COVID. I'm pouring so much gratitude in what I have achieved. I'm pouring so much gratitude into my now. I'm pouring so much gratitude into the people I'm working with right now, that they say man plans and God laughs. I know where I am right now, and I know where that is going, and I hope it's bigger, and I hope it's better, and I hope it uplifts so many people and it inspires so many people to also uplift more, to pass it on, pay it forward, right? I'm hoping I have my PhD in a couple of years too. But, yeah, I'm just grateful for where I am now. I think once we get out of, Ireland's been in lockdown for a few months now. So to talk about the future, I'm like, right, you know, watch this space. There's a lot coming. I'm happy, I'm excited, and whoever's on the journey with me, thank you. But your girl's just doing what she's doing as she's doing it. I used to be a big planner. If you ask everybody that knows me, I'm the girl who has a whole list of what I'm gonna do now, what I'm gonna do tomorrow, what I have planned for the next 5 years. Now I'm just like, girl, just do what you need to do. Tackle the tasks that you have today to achieve the bigger picture. But there's no big grandiose, in 5 years' time, I want to be the president of Ireland. I'm sorry, I don't have that. I'm just happy for where I am and where this is all going, and the people that I'm working with, especially the people I'm working with.
Great so much. And so I'm going to ask one more question. I know that we still have some time, but there's hasn't been any more questions. Well, there was one more question, but then I'm also going to allow you the space to, after the question, plug any events, initiatives, or any, just conclude the conversation. And yes, I want to give you that space to do so. And so the last question that we have for today, in terms of, this was based on the discussion about the dynamics between Black deaf women and Black deaf men. So what someone asked, Ramel asked, what do you think we need to do to make more Black men take action? What is your opinion? Oh yes, certainly they would like to know your opinion on that.
Society has made Black men think that the thoughts are not valid, the opinions are not valid, the beliefs are not valid, the actions are not enough. We need to, without sounding as if we need to baby Black men into action, that's far from what I'm saying. I think it's a reciprocated thing where we love each other into action. I think we need to create more safe spaces where Black men can unpack the emotional trauma that they carry with them, because they say hurt people, right? So if you feel like somebody doesn't have the emotional capacity to listen to you, maybe they've never been given the space to be listened to. So how do we not create that space, but how do we encourage them to create that space? How do we invite them into our spaces to have conversations where they're not shamed or laughed at and ridiculed? Yeah, I think we just need to keep on applauding the men who are doing what they're doing and encourage them to pull more men into the initiatives. I'm so big on not saving people, on not spoon feeding people, on not thinking that you need to like jump in and save the day. I really believe that everybody's capable of doing what they need to do for themselves, given the right resources. And so how do we now celebrate the Black men who are doing enough? That sparks an interest in the Black men who are not. It's like, oh, he's doing that, and everybody's like, keep on doing you. Maybe I can do it too. Compared to, oh, you're not doing enough. You never speak up. Why aren't, nobody listens to that. So yeah, celebrate each other. I'm rooting for everybody Black, like Issa Rae says.
Yes. And I'm sorry, like there's, yes, I'm just, I was just laughing when you were talking about do you boo and just being yourself, and because someone asked another question about what advice you would give, and just really reflecting on the conversation. You provided such amazing content and sound bites and teaching points that we can learn from and like add into our praxis and add into our canon and add into our political repertoire of how we get free. How do we move forward? How do we learn from one another, like you said, and challenge ourselves and push ourselves to be better Black feminists, better activists, better organizers, better people, to shape and see the communities that we want to see. And so I just want to say thank you so much to Lydia for even saying yes to this conversation, for the work that you do. I honor you. I give you your flowers. And I thank you so much for being at the vanguard of radical movement building in the diaspora. I want to thank Natasha and Aurelia for your time, for your expertise, for your interpretation, for your labor, for your work. It does not go unnoticed. I see you, we see each other. And and I respect and honor you and give you your flowers as well. And to our audience members, thank you so much for being here from around the world, for listening in about what Black Deaf justice in Europe looks like, a conversation with Lydia Gratis. And I just wanted to give Lydia the final, the floor to say anything that you would like to say as we wrap up the event.
I want to say, I said this at the beginning, but I'm so grateful to you for having me here. I'm not sure you fully get it, but there really is not spaces like this where Black deaf women can come and be heard, understood, and loved. Because I feel so much love from you. So I'm so grateful that our paths have crossed. I'm so grateful that we can continue these conversations. I'm so grateful to you, to the platform that you built. It's so inspiring, it's so necessary beyond the conversation of Black deaf people in Europe, in America, anywhere in the world. The work that you do is so necessary, it's so important. I need everybody to go follow Black Women Radicals now. But yeah, honestly, I'm so grateful and I'm so thankful. And to Natasha and Aurelia, thank you for being here. Thank you for your patience. I sent them like 7 drafts of my answers and they were like, it's okay, keep doing your thing. I'm like, okay. I need to add one more thing. But yeah, to the Black deaf women in Europe, I just want them to know that they are seen and they are loved, and we have so much work to do. Alone you go fast, together we go far. I'm just dropping quotes everywhere. But yeah, the Black deaf community, the work that we're doing all over Europe, everybody's sharing their truth unapologetically without worrying about what somebody's going to think or what somebody's going to say, and how they're going to perceive it. Just be you, and the right people will find you. This conversation is proof of that.
Wow, I thank you. Thank you, Lydia. I'm about to cry like a thug tear, like one tear about to come down my eyes. I'm so grateful. And I just want to read some of the comments. Well, I don't understand French. I'm so sorry, but someone said we need more.
Oh, we have Aurelia for that.
Yes, someone in the comments are in France, French saying, I think they're saying, thank you for this conversation on Black women, deaf women in France. Romel said, we need more of this and such an important opportunity for us Black deaf people to speak on issues like this. Thanks. We have other comments too, just thanking you. And so, yes, I appreciate you, Lydia. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Natasha and Aurelia again. Thank you for our audience for being here. And listen, Lydia, this won't be my last time working with you. So
I'll be sending emails tomorrow. When can we chat again? I miss you already.
Yes. And someone else said, Black Deaf Excellence, this webinar is very insightful. Thank you so much for this conversation. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you. And this webinar, this conversation will live on Black Women Radicals YouTube. So you'll be able to access it at any time. So thank you so much again.
What did the YouTubers say? Like, comment, and subscribe?
Yeah. I never say that. I feel like
I'm saying it for you. Like, comment, and subscribe.
you know, I'm always get, you know, a little
You
embarrassed and
too.
nervous
Play
when that
better.
happens.
Play
But
better.
thank you so much, everyone, and have a great night and afternoon, evening, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, Lydia.
Thanks
Bye.
for having me. Bye.
Bye-bye. Oh, let me see if I can, okay, I couldn't do this. Thank you again. Bye-bye, everyone.